Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. I love casting with Aqua Eco Resin, and I especially love to make candle jars. But what I love most about the process is adding my own twist to make my items totally unique. So I was quite excited when I had the idea to dress up my candle jar, quite literally. If you would like to see me dressing up a plain candle jar and making it look beautiful, stay tuned and enjoy the video. Temporary tattoos are my favourite thing for decorating my Aquacast candle jars and anything else Aquacast. They just work so well. And this is the one I'm going to be using today. As you can see, it's a thistle, and I'm going to be going with those colours of purple and green. The pigments that I use for my Aquacast are from Homeware Design, and here I've got amethyst and avocado. I weighed out my water and then my Aquacast powder in a silicone mixing pot and gave it a really good mix. Aquacast is a natural and environmentally friendly alternative to epoxy resin, and that is why it's called an eco resin. But it's actually more like plaster of Paris with its gypsum base to it. This has added polymers, which makes it different though to plaster of Paris. It means you can add the pigments and get some really vivid, strong colours, and the polymers also make it much stronger than plaster of Paris, and I love it to bits. It's perfect for making candle vessels. If you're interested in any of the Aquacast range, please check out the links and discount codes in the video description. You will find them at Elichem Resins. Right, I'll be filling 2 moulds for this candle jar, the jar and the lid. But the measurements I got were for all of it all together, so I didn't know exactly how much I would need to put aside for the lid. And obviously I'm using 2 different colours, as you already know, so I needed to know exactly how much to measure out. That's why I've just filled the mould with water to find out the volume of it. Now I'm adding the Aquacast of the same volume before adding the pigment. That way I can have my 2 different colours of Aquacast going on. When I poured it, I realised it was still a little bit lumpy, so I did give it a bit more of a mix. I then added a drop of the amethyst pigment, gave it a good stir, and then it was ready to add to the lid mould. Now, if you're a regular viewer to my channel, you will know I have a lot of jar moulds, especially the very fancy ones from Buan Nicole, which I am in love with. They are gorgeous, but funnily enough, the mould that I've made the most jars out of is a very cheap mould from Amazon, and it's the one I'm using today. The reason I've used that more than any other mould is because it's got straight sides, and I do like to decorate my mould jars. And it does help if the sides are smooth. And so this one has had loads of uses, and I do need to buy another one actually because it's getting a bit overused now. But that is the good thing when you buy cheap. If you buy cheap, you can buy more, can't you, without breaking the bank. So I will be buying another one of these moulds. You do get what you pay for with moulds. I always say it when I'm using my more expensive ones. The quality does, make a massive difference. But it doesn't mean I'm against using the cheap ones now and again, especially this one. Right, next it was time to fill the jar with Aquacast, and I've found that the lid from this particular pigment jar from Laura's Art Corner works perfectly to put inside the base of the mould to make it stay round. That, back to the cheap mould discussion. Cheap moulds don't always hold the shape very well, and this one is one of those. If you don't put something on the inside, it distorts, and you need it to be round so that the round lid will fill it. And that's why I always put the lid of that pot of pigment in the base of this mould. So the avocado pigment has gone in, I'm giving it a good stir, and then it's just the same process. Pour it in, give it a good tap, get rid of all the bubbles, especially around the rim of the mould, and wait for it to cure. The aqua cast I'm using today is original aqua cast, and that takes about an hour to be fully cured. Well, to be cured for demolding. Fully curing, I think, is about a day before, it's nicely dried out and all of that. But you can demold after about an hour. If you wanted to get something that's even quicker than that, there is now an aquacast called Aquacast Turbo, and that cures in about half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour, depending on the size of the mould. And it's now an hour later, and typically for British weather at this time of year, it is getting dark. So we've got the overhead light on and lots of shadows, but still, we can still see what's going on. I'm just trying to get the lid out of the mould at this point, and I made a bit of a boo-boo here. You can see I've got blue pigment on my glove now, and I should have been cleaning my gloves or changing my gloves so I didn't get blue pigment all over the jar. But that would be too sensible for me, wouldn't it? Didn't do that, did I? Never mind. These things wipe off. Now that's demoulded, I'm going to leave it to dry out until the next day before I add the temporary tattoo. It's always best to let it dry out a little bit before going any further. So there's the lid. Let's make its jacket. Here's the fabric I've used to dress up my jar. I've cut a rectangle, which is going to be folded in half lengthways. And I'm not giving you measurements because depending on what kind of jar you're using and how much of it you want to be covered, you'll come up with your own measurements. So I just folded it in half. I'm now going to sew along the raw edges with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I will turn it the right way around. For turning it the right way around, I'm using my extra long hemostats, grabbing it at the end and then just turning it round. So it makes it nice and easy. I use those hemostats all the time. I do apologise for the slightly wonky camera angle. I'm really not used to filming sewing projects, but hopefully I will be doing some more sewing projects and I will get better at the filming of it. I really enjoyed making this jar jacket, which I've just named it. I think that suits it quite well, jar jacket. Yeah, I enjoyed making it and I think it looked great in the end. It really added some quality to my finished candle jar. So you might see me making some more of these. Anyway, it's the right way around now and it just needs some ironing. And a note for myself, when filming oneself ironing, do not put the tripod on the ironing board. Sorry about the wobble. The next job was to make my 2 faux leather handles, which I'm cutting here out of some artificial leather. And yeah, they're just going to be decorative. I just thought it would look really pretty on there. They're definitely not going to be functional handles. Once they were cut, I sewed around the perimeter, and again, this is just for decoration. Next, I did it again with a terrible camera angle. Never mind, you can just about see it. I'm just positioning the handles where I want them to be, clipping them into place, and then I sewed them into position. I also added a label to the front, which I designed on Canva. Well, Canva designed it for me, really. I just changed one of their templates and then printed it on my DCF printer and then just ironed it onto some white cotton, and now I'm sewing it into position. I didn't do a really good job of it. I think really I'm having some problems with my DCF printer and the black didn't show up as well as I wanted it to, but it still looks quite cute. The next job was to sew the two ends together, and then it was ready to adorn the candle jar. But first, let me show you the application of the temporary tattoo. First of all, you need to take off the clear film. Next, you need to prepare a damp cloth. I'm actually using kitchen roll, and I folded it up to make kind of a pad of kitchen roll, and I've soaked it. It's really wet, and that's ready for applying the tattoo. So I'm putting the tattoo into position here, and then getting the wet kitchen towel and just holding it on there for a little while. It doesn't take long, and yeah. It's very, very easy to apply the temporary tattoos to cured Aquacast. And by the way, I haven't sealed the Aquacast yet. That's coming soon. So I would say it was only on there about 30 seconds before I was able to peel off the paper, and it came off nice and easily. When it came off, I saw that there was a square around the image where the paper had been. I wasn't sure at the time if that was like a sticky residue or what it was really, but it turns out I think all it was the Aquacast around where the paper had been was wet and it had darkened. There was actually nothing on there. I didn't need to do what I'm doing here, I don't think, but it doesn't hurt to give it a wipe, does it? I'm just wiping it all over, and you can see once it's all wet, it's all the same colour. So I'm sure that's all it was, because later on, when it was all dry, there was no problem at all. It all looked very uniform. But isn't that an easy way to decorate the Aquacast? And I think it looks so pretty. It makes it look like ceramic when you've got pictures like that on there. It takes your project to a completely different level, doesn't it? I love that to bits. The next job was to sand the lid. Now, what you could do is to just sand it, seal it and leave it. It's got quite a nice mottled effect on there, which I quite liked, but I decided to put some epoxy resin on the top of mine just because, really. I just thought it would look nice to have a nice shiny lid. So yeah, here I'm just giving it a good sanding. If you can get a jar mould where the lid is the other way around so that the top part of the lid is touching the silicone mould, the lid will come out beautiful and shiny, but that's not how this one works. A lot of the time you get this with lids for jars, where the opening where you're pouring the resin into the mould is actually the top, and so it ends up being rough because it's not touching any silicone. It's such a shame, and I just wish it was the other way around. Before adding any resin to the lid, I wanted it to be sealed, and so here I'm going to be sealing all of my Aquacast. I'm trying out a different sealant this time. I've been experiencing problems with the wax seeping into the Aquacast jars because they're not sealed well enough on the inside, and so I did some research and found other people that had had the same problem, and they recommended this sealer. And so I thought I would try it. I had to get the concentrate one. It was the only one available in the UK, but you can buy it that's already diluted. And so, yeah, it makes up 1 gallon, the little bottle, and I've made some into my bowl, which has a lid on. So I just take the lid off the bowl and dip my Aquacast in there, and it makes life nice and easy. I put the lid back on the bowl and put the bowl away. And so it's always there for me to dip my items in there. At the time of filming, I'm not sure yet whether it's going to stop the problem from happening with the wax, but I'm hopeful. And it's easy to just do several coats as well. So yeah, I did 2 coats of this sealer. After it had had a little bit of time to soak in, I wiped off the excess, the residue with some kitchen paper, just because I didn't want it pooling on the surface of the jar. I did the same for the lid, and then once that had dried out completely, I was able to add my epoxy resin to the top. Like I said before, you could just leave it like that. I quite like that textured look on there. But anyway, I'd made up my mind to add some resin. I carefully teased it to the edges, made sure I got rid of any excess bubbles with my heat gun, and left it to cure. The next day, when the resin was fully cured and I looked at it, I didn't like the way the edges of the lid looked so much lighter than the top of the lid, because obviously the resin darkened it. And so I took a purple acrylic marker. It's not as dark as the top of the lid, but it's darker than it was on the sides, and it definitely, it's not so much of a contrast and it blends in a lot better. So I thought it did look a lot better after doing that. If you don't have an acrylic marker, you could use a pen and you could use acrylic pen and a paintbrush, or you could even use like a gold pen and make a lovely gold edge for it. That would look nice too. But yeah, the purple marker did a good job. And we're back to the jacket. I decided to add some rivets to the leather. I just thought it would give it that finishing touch, and that's one thing I do love doing. With any project, the most fun part is embellishing it at the end, and I just had it in my mind that rivets would look good, so there I just hammered in a few rivets. Now it's time for the candle wax. One tip that I saw for when you're pouring candle wax into your eco resin vessels is to heat up the vessel first. People tell me off for calling it a vessel. But anyway, I'm still saying it. Heating up my candle vessel or candle jar first, because it's supposed to really help with the candle making process. I think it's supposed to help avoid getting a crater in the middle. But I tend to get a crater in the middle near my wick all the time, and I end up using my heat gun just to level out the wax afterwards. It's just one of those things I haven't quite managed to get just right yet, but still, it's fine. The wax I'm using is natural beeswax, and I'm using a wooden wick. I do like to use wooden wicks. I just like the crackling sound they make, and you get a good large flame from them. So yeah, there it is. The wax is going in. I've scented it as well with teakwood scent. And yeah, I just need to wait for that to cure. I did level out the crater that I got in the middle around the wick again. I didn't film that, but yeah, I levelled it out. And then all that was left to do was cut the wick, and it was finished. Let's put the jacket on. I really love the overall look that the fabric gives the jar. I do think on a practical level it would have been better if I had given it a base so that it was more of a basket that the jar sits into, and then it wouldn't be able to slide upwards. But yeah, I was being a bit lazy, I think, really, with my design idea. But still, I love it to bits, and I'm definitely going to be making more of these because I think they look so classy with that fabric jacket on. And of course, the temporary tattoo was the original game changer with this candle jar, wasn't it? That really did make it look stunning. I'm in love with that image and I want to buy more. So we've reached the end of the video, and if you've enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up. And I think I need to start asking people to subscribe a little bit more often because my channel is just not growing at the moment. It's been stuck around the same level for absolutely ages. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. It will help me so much. And yeah, share it, thumbs up, leave comments, all of that, please. It will be really appreciated. So that's it for today, and I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.